What's up YouTube, Tbixi here again with a video showcase on what is my Freeze Pulse Totem or Freeze Pulse Spear Totem Hierophant build guide. First of all, I need to point out that if you want to stay up to date with the build, if you like it a lot, if you want to replay it again, if you're here a while after the video was created, I write written guides at poe-vault.com, and I need to emphasize that the content there will always be updated, whereas the video is just here to showcase you the things I use at the time and to showcase you the video of what the build can do. So that being said, in the background you'll see some easier content in the game, or some easier bosses. This build probably can take it well as far as you want. You can take it to Ubers, but I don't think that my iteration or the way I set up the guide will actually get you there. You will probably have to find some other sources of information, but outside of Ubers, I think this build can tackle all the content if you play well. This is also why I left this piece in the video, because if you don't play well, you will die, but even then, you can still finish off the fight rather easily. I think in general, it's a pretty good all-arounder. It's also a very, very solid league starter, which you will see a bit later in the video. There will be a very low-level map, which you are clearing very, very fast, even though I didn't have much gear then. And they will showcase some leveling bosses even to showcase that, yeah, it really actually is good from level 28 onwards, where you get your second totem and ancestral bond, and then, I don't know, from there on, it gets a lot better at 38 when you get multi-totem, so you can get 4 totems, and then you just cruise through the game, and everything dies, and life is good. It's also a pretty solid mapper, as you can see here. I showcased some shenanigans with GMP. If you have, I don't think I have enough damage, but if you have a bit more damage, you can, fill the screen with freezing pulses just for the memes. It's fun. But in general, you shouldn't. But yeah, it maps pretty well. This is a T16 Grand Design 106 pack size map, Mausoleum. And I think I checked when I was recording. I think I cleared the map with like no moves remaining, or almost none remaining in like 2 minutes, which I think is a fairly good time for a non-200 divine, some giga chat speed, clear speed build. I think it's pretty good, especially knowing that you can kill all the content in the game with it. Outside of Ubers, like most builds that clear faster than that will have to call a carry if they run into a boss, right? Now, like I said, one of the main selling points, in my opinion, to the build is that it's so straightforward. It's very easy to gear. It requires virtually nothing to get going. It also has some very clear upgrade paths, which is very easy for a newer player to follow, which also is very easy for a newer player to execute on. And then in return, you will get a character that will carry you from level, 1. Honestly, the leveling process between 1 and 28 is not the greatest because, the way that these skills function and this class works and so on and so on. But in general, it's a solid leveling character, or a very solid leveling character, and it scales you right into the end game. Here's this footage I talked about from a lower level map. You can see that it's like a little bit more clunky, and like sometimes it doesn't one-shot a pack, but it's super fine for the the currency that's in here. This character has like no gear outside of a 6-link, which is honestly not super cheap, but I had it ready to record footage, but it should be fine even if you don't have that. Some bonus content is like one-shotting Izaro and stuff like that, which is funny while you're in campaign, right? But in general, yeah, it's a really solid all-arounder, very good league starter, scales as far as you want it to scale, has really solid mapping speed. The only downside is that it's not super tanky, and you should abuse your totems as a layer of defense, but we'll get more into that when we start talking about the gear, which I will try to explain to you step by step. So here we are. This is my Hierophant. It's currently level 89. It honestly is way lower level than I anticipated it to be, or needed to be, in order for me to record the video. I initially wanted it to go to 95, maybe 96, then record some really juicy boss encounters and so on. But honestly, I thought if I can, if a purifier at level 85 falls over, I guess I have enough content to push out the video, and there's no reason to delay it. as I have other projects going, right? So Freezing Pulse. First of all, what is important to know is this character looks very squishy on the how do you say that, on first glance, because it has 3.5k life, 1.1k ES, which it really has no way to regen the ES. So if you get hit a lot, you probably won't have the ES. So that looks very squishy, but actually, as it's a Hierophant, it has the extra Mind Over Matter, which makes it so you actually have more like 5 to 6k effective health pool. And honestly, that's enough not to get one-shot in maps. And then on top of that, we have a few other layers of defenses that make it so you won't actually die that often unless you make mistakes. So it's very important, if you go back and you look at the footage of me playing maps, you use your totems to like distract the enemies from your existence, right? Like you should be putting totems ahead of you while you're playing, because that way the initial aggro or the initial attention from enemy monsters will go to them and not to you, which is important because then, you know, by the time they actually realize that you exist, they're probably dead. And even the alt pack, which realizes, oh, look, there's a guy there, will probably not do enough damage to kill you. Okay, let's talk about the gear. First of all, because we're talking about defenses, there is Verity's Veil. Verity's Veil is an insane item because it makes you hexproof if you run a magic ring, which is the necessity for the build because of the chest piece, which I guess I'll cover. The chest piece inflicts a random hex on you whenever your totems die. Now, this chest piece gives you an extra link by, you know, supporting you by level 20 spell totem, which makes it so you have 7 links instead of 6, right? Additionally, some spell damage and some totem life is not a bad stat. The chest nowadays is contested because you no longer get +1 totems, and it can be beaten, but honestly, because this is a Leaguestart build, because this is a build that I think needs to try to work on a, you know, first of all, on a budget, second of all, without being too complicated. I think beating this chest is too complicated and you should just use it unless you want to push things super hyper far. So yeah, but because you can see that if you put a totem down, then, you know, I'm getting cursed, right? Curses are bad for you, very bad for you, as they are really, really scary. But in our case, that really doesn't matter that much, because Verity's Veil makes us hexproof, which means that we can have the curses affecting us, we'll get to that later, but they won't actually do damage to us. This means that this basically negates the downside of the chest piece and gives us the free link, like, for free. Now, additionally, Verity's Veil also makes it so enemies hitting you are unlucky. Now, most people don't know how to calculate this, but it's actually probably one of the best defensive layers in the game. It's also why Lori's Lantern is really hard to replace on some kind of certain types of low-life characters. The enemies being unlucky is pretty sick. It's basically a 35 to 40% less damage taken multiplier, which is by far the best in the game. But it's generally hard to find, and it's usually very costly, or, you know, its opportunity cost is really high. In this case, there is none, because you need to have a magic ring, which we also very easily use to counteract the chest piece. So basically, since you already have a magic ring equipped, well, you're basically getting a free 35, let's say, % damage mitigation. The helmet's enchanted with Freezing Pulse projectile speed, which is pretty funny. I randomly hit this in lab when I was leveling my character, and I put it on, and honestly, my guide suggests to have Sniper's Mark Curse Effect, which is by far the best enchant you can get if you're looking at it from a DPS perspective. However, I think if you're playing mainly Mapper, Freezing Pulse projectile speed is actually pretty fucking solid. If I compare it to what I played in the past, the projectile speed's actually nice. It's cool. Anyhow, let's go to the magic ring. So in order for divinities to work, we need a magic ring. Now, there's a couple of things to be said about this ring. First of all, if you can and if you want to spend the money and the time, you don't want this to be a diamond ring. However, there is a divination card which gives you a diamond ring of redemption, which means that if you look for a blue ring which has only curses enemies with frostbite on hit, you're going to find 1,000,000 diamond rings for 1 chaos or 10 chaos. And then if it's not a diamond ring, they're going to be 200 chaos. And since I was able to cap resists, I kind of didn't care, so I just bought this one. In an ideal world, if you want to spend the time, it was about time for me, not about money, because the currency is whatever at this point. But if you want to spend time, you kind of want to alterate a, actual life with frostbite on hit ideally on an amethyst base for the chaos stress, because then you would have, 23 chaos stress and the curse on hit plus like 70 life, right? But yeah, this one just basically means you go to trade, you buy it for 10 chaos, you craft life, and you're done. It takes 1 minute, right? And then the alteration spam, it's doable, but it takes really long, and I didn't want to spend that time. Amulet is another layer of defense. It's the Pandemonious, which has sadly became pretty expensive. It used to be like 5C. Now it's a bit more expensive, but it's still doable, and I think it's worth it. If you catalyze this, it gives you 24% cold pen. It gives you 24, well, more, I guess, because it's not a good roll. It gives you 20 to 30% cold damage, which then gets scaled, right? Some cold stress. It's pretty good. But it also gives you the action speed reduction of enemies, and it blinds everything around you. Now, this is really nice because blind, well, this character really has no actual attack mitigation, right? Usually you either have evasion, or, well, some people have determination, or some armor, or whatever. We don't have that. So blind's pretty good because that makes enemies miss. You can look at this as like a grace or something. It's anointed with the Whispers of Doom because we want 2 curses, as we said, the frostbite on hit, and then there's the Sniper's Mark, which is linked to an Arcanist brand, and then some other buffs in case you find a tougher enemy. The shield's another big one. This is easy to make if you want to make it yourself. You can find a shield with 3 good suffixes, and then you can, on a Shaper shield, and then you can just reforge Influence when you lock suffixes, and you will instantly get +1 totems, but this is explained in the guide. Anyhow, I found one with pretty good rolls by itself. What is important here is I would want to have life, but in the case you craft it yourself with the suffix can be changed method, you would have to craft life, which is fine. You would have 70 life. And then the suffixes, you want cast speed, crit spell, some res is fine. You can also get an open prefix to craft cold as extra chaos. There's like a multitude of things. The shield's very flexible. As long as you have the +1 totem mod with like 4 or 5 nice mods, you will be fine. The boots, I bought these, just high life, high resistances, high movement speed. I crafted on, the implicits are Brittle Grounds, and the regen, Brittle Ground because it caps your crit, or not caps, but it gives you auto crit. Make sure if you're actually fighting a boss which is annoying you, make sure you actually drop the Brittle Ground on the mob, like circle around it or something, as it will help you tremendously. And then the gloves is just a generic damage against shield hit, damage against shield enemies per gloves. Has some dex, has good life, has some resist. I think I bought this for like 90C or something. And then it has mark effect and a nerf. Again, I think if you're mapping, there's an argument to be made to get exposure here, because honestly, I don't use my frost bomb enough. So if you're not bossing, this is pretty good. What else is there? There's the last ring. I honestly can't remember how I made this. I think I alted, or I tried to alt frostbite, and I altered into this, and then I just kept it. It's very bad. It's just life dex, some cold damage against chilled enemies, but it's not good. Lastly, there's my wand. This is interesting. I was looking for a good wand because I wanted to showcase how to make this, and I ended up just making it myself. So I bought a +1 to all cold spells, kill gems, profane wand, because profane is probably the best base, because you kind of don't care about a little bit of flat to spells. On the implicit on other ones, I hit it with spell damage essences until I hit T1 or T2. I think I decided to settle, yeah, T2 call to spells. Then you craft prefixes can be changed, you scour off your suffixes and you multi-mod. So this one probably costs like maybe 5.5 divines. Because it's really hard to, you know, hit the call to spells when you're using essence. It's probably like 6 divines. In the passive tree, what else can we talk about? Obviously the tree is just a tree. Oh, we need to talk about the belt. So the belt says that you count as low life while you are cursed with vulnerability, and we are always cursed with vulnerability through the belt. So this means we can pick up pain attunement, which gives us 30% more spell damage. Anyhow, passive tree usually picks up some mana, some spell crit. It picks up some cast speed, because cast speed is nice. Mastery wise, don't look at this, by the way. I tried this, it's bad. I should have respec'd this a while ago. It has a totem mastery, which basically is another 5% damage reduction because it takes the damage from the totems. It obviously has Ancestral Bond. It has Mind Over Matter for the extra tankiness. It's using some random jewels. It also has 1 Watcher's Eye, which, like I said in the guide as mentioned, if you're running Zealotry, you get a cast speed one. I think in all honesty, the Hatred one is probably better if you're running Hatred, and I think in general it will be better, but it's also way more expensive, so I ended up not buying this. Then you're running a Rain of Splinters. Mine is pretty average, but they're also pretty expensive nowadays, so therefore it's average. And a Self-Flagellation, which I talked about before. So basically, because you're putting curses on yourself, even though you're hexproof, they are still on you, so Self-Flag gives you 20% damage per curse on you, which means I think you can get 8 curses on you, which is 160% increased damage from a jewel. Pretty good. Ascendancy-wise, it's a bit in the middle. I think I generally say go Pursuit of Faith first. I tried Conviction of Power, and I was honestly very, very pleasantly surprised. Especially because like 4 or 5 levels after you pick up your first lab, you will get access to multi-totem, and this will be probably not as good. But this means you can either choose, right? This makes you do more damage and make you tankier, but it makes your QOL go down a lot, because this 100% totem placement speed is actually really, really good. Duration is also nice in boss fights and so on and so on. Anyhow, it's either one of these first, so either Conviction or Pursuit is by far the best one to pick up. Third lap is Ritual of Awakening, last lap is Arcane Blessing or Divine Guidance. I like this a lot because damage is good. This is also good. This gives you more tankiness, but it's not that good. It's not that much, actually. So I think I can play well enough to stay alive with this character as it is. If you're struggling for survivability, you should probably get Divine Guidance. Otherwise, I think Arcane Blessing is just... It's a lot of damage. It's like 20% more damage, which is a lot, right? All in all, I think the build played really well. I think it's also... there's very many ways to scale this. Like, this ring is really bad. You can find damage enchant on the helmet. You can easily find a better shield. You can easily find better jewels, because mine are, well, they were 4 chaos and 6 chaos. So I guess that means you know that they're not good. You can get a 30% Rain of Splinters instead of 40%. You can get levels. There's multiple ways to like scale this even further. But all in all, I think it does what it needs to do just fine. I think it's one of the best League starters out there. I hope you guys enjoy it when you play it. As a big totem enjoyer myself, I did actually enjoy it. I am a huge Shockwave fan, but honestly, Freeze Pulse was really fun as well. I hadn't played it in a while, which was why I thought I needed to play it and you know, push an update and so on, and feel like if there was anything I needed to change whatsoever. Anyhow, that pretty much concludes everything I wanted to say. If you have any questions, you know, drop a comment down below. If you like the footage, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.